A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are back with Dr. Vimal with the same issue that we raised on 19th of June, wherein she had discussed on various aspects of violence and the heightened form of it, which she described as domestic violence. Last time, she has covered on various aspects. To sum up, there are fews. What is abuse? What are the possible reasons for the abuse? What are the different types of abuse? What keeps the cycle of abuse going? Why a person allow this abuse continue to happen on them? We are looking at the psychological perspective of the same. We have got so many questions on it, and therefore this session is all about making the knowledge complete and comprehensive. So here we are going to deal more on what keeps the cycle of abuse going on for long. And here I hand the baton to Dr. Vimal, and she will take you through the journey of this from the psychological perspective. To you.
Thank you for having me back. Like Osama mentioned, we're going to talk about what keeps the abuse in place. Um, I had mentioned in the last discussion that the longer one stays, the harder it gets to come out of it. But why does one stay for so long when it is hurtful, when it is saddening, when it is depleting your energy, taking away your power to be you? And sometimes it goes to the extent of, after many years, I have heard people say, I'm not even the person who got married. I'm a changed person. I'm sure you get to hear a lot of that.
A lot, many.
Yeah, and so one of the prime reasons that keeps the abuse in place is the beliefs related to marriage. We as children are raised to come up to other people's expectations. It you know, childhood messages sound like it's your responsibility to make sure that the relationship works, and if it doesn't, then it's your fault. And with those kind of messages around there, it results in a lot of accumulation of shame and guilt. Shame saying I'm a bad person, guilt saying that I made a mistake.
Can I stop you a bit here? So when you are using the word we often, so is it correct to assume that both the boy and the girl or the man and the woman are equally in that position of shame, and therefore they continue to bear the abuse, or it's something only concentrated towards the female who are the subject of domestic violence?
Yes, usually it is both, unless there is no regret or remorse in one of the partners. But usually it is both, because when people get married or choose companionship rather than isolation and loneliness or spending life on their own, the intention is to have a companion and the intention is to make the relationship work. Very often, when it doesn't work, they feel that it's their fault. Individually, they feel helpless. They don't know what to do about it. They also don't know what to do for the other person. In fact, one of the reasons that relationships go wrong is because there is a sense of over responsibility कि मैं ऐसा क्या करूं कि वो दूसरा इंसान खुश हो जाए.
True.
And जहाँ वो आना शुरू हो जाता है, then there is more invasion of boundaries, and then the more the attempt to control, the more sour the relationship becomes. Instead of asking that, what is it that you would want me to do? What is it that you want? What is my intention of being in this relationship? What is your intention of being in the relationship? What is our intention for the children? So these are the psychological reasons. There's also a fear of judgment, that supposing our relationship doesn't work out, everybody is going to talk about it. And
Fear of society.
Fear also parents, even if it's not
All right.
society,
The family and the society
close
or
knit
the
family
close-
saying that it would be my fault, or oh, what a weak person, you couldn't even make a relationship work. और बच्चों के लिए भी तुम साथ नहीं रह पाए. You know, those kind of judgmental statements that can come your way. Um, and so the guilt becomes heavier, and as the guilt and the over responsibility becomes heavier, the harder it becomes to carry on with the relationship. There's also the fear of loneliness, that what if he or she leaves me? How will I manage my life alone? There is fear around being alone, being alone and isolated, or if she goes, she'll take the children with her, or if he could also say, if I go, I'll take the children with me, and then it's like a threat to the other person. So there is fear in itself, fear of fear and fear of loneliness and the fear of judgment. So there are a lot of fears going around. And these are the reasons why abuse stays in place. But Osama, there's also a query from the legal point of view. What are the legal interventions that can happen, especially during the lockdown? We mentioned in our last discussion that there was an increase in domestic violence. So how can people reach out? Because the lockdown has played an integral role in getting people to decide. Either they make the relationship work at any cost, or they want to walk out. So for those people who are listening to us, who have decided to walk out, what are the legal provisions that the Indian law brings forth?
All right. So until 2005, there was no specific law that used to take care of this situation, where how the victim of an abuse can go and approach to the court and seek certain kind of a redressal. So it is in 2005 we came up with our law, which is known as the Protection of Women from the Domestic Violence Act. This law is a very comprehensive law, and prior to the passing of this law, what used to be the thing which a woman can get from the court is to go to the court and seek the maintenance. So it is only the financial help that a female can get by approaching to the court of law under various provisions of law. Mm-hmm. So in 2005, this law has come into being, and it defines each and everything which you have covered today and also the other day in your topic, as to what is abuse and what are the different types of abuse. So the domestic violence itself is a very large and has a comprehensive definition in the law itself, and it starts with that notion that the violence can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be psychological, it can be sociological, it can also be sexual, and economic exploitation is also a kind of the violence. So for the people who are viewing it, whenever I use the term domestic violence, most of the people come up with a picture that it is a physical abuse that has been caused to the victim and that allows them to approach to the court. But this law for the first time says no. If there is a name calling, ridiculing, economic exploitation for any reason whatsoever, you cannot do with a female. And it does not just stop here. It says that if you put any member of the family to the danger by putting you in that kind of a position, then also it is the economic violence. The beauty of this law is another thing. I'll give you a situation what used to be the situation prior to the passing of this law, which we call as Domestic Violence Act in a normal parlance. Prior to the Domestic Violence Act, there was no provision for the female to seek the intervention of the court to stay in the matrimonial house. So there was an imminent danger of losing the roof over the head. And that is one of such a discouraging factor for the female to ever come to the court. Where would I reside? Because in most of the cases, as you initially said, it is our belief system wherein the female is being taught that she has to live and adjust with the system in the house. So the law said that once there is a violence, a female can approach to the court and seek that I should not be removed from the house. which in a technical language is called the shared household. Shared household is not necessarily to be an owned property of the husband. It could be the property where the owner is the father or any other member, but where they have decided to live together either in a nuclear family setup or otherwise in a joint family setup. So once you have a protection from the court that you will not be thrown out from the house, then half of the problem gets solved. Then the law, I'll just tell, the law provides a remedy in 4 or 5 major kind of a thing which is practically used. One is the economic benefit a female can get from the court. That is, the court awards certain kind of a maintenance and the monetary support, the protection of roof over your head, the protection in terms of any further abuse by the abuser, and then the protection in terms of providing that the child cannot be taken away by the other spouse. So if your husband is saying that I can walk away with the child, you will go to the court, and under section 21 you can have the immediate protection. Ex parte protection can also be granted in certain cases. So your major weaknesses, yours, when I say yours, I only mean say
The
female.
victim,
The
yeah.
victim here, the victim can only be, when we are talking about the law, we have to shun away that the men can be a victim in this, because it's not a gender neutral law, it is
Yes.
only for the protection of the
Yes.
female. Sorry guys, but yeah, that's what we are here. We would be graduating maybe at a later stage, God forbid, that may be a situation. So the law in fact provides all kind of a situation for you to come to the court, which was otherwise not there.
Does the law provide some protection to the people who are isolated? Because even if they do reach out, or is it dependent on the lawyer's sensitivity to pick up that the victim is isolated, so one can talk to them in that give some kind of a sensitive response for that?
Law definitely provides for it. As I said, the Domestic Violence Act is a very comprehensive one. And here it says that not only the victim, who is in this law called as an aggrieved person, only he can approach. Even a neighbor, the third party, can approach that there is a person who is a victim of a violence at the house, so he can knock the door for the help of the victim. And then we also have an institutionalized concept where the protection officer is given to every local police station. That protection officer can approach to the court regarding the abuse. So the law covers the thing. Lawyer comes into the picture when somebody, that third person, the neighbor or any stranger or any member of the family approaches them, or the victim themselves approach to the lawyer and asking them. Of course, a lawyer who's dealing into the matrimonial issues has to be sensitive and compassionate and be up to the task to immediately take the matter before. As I said earlier, section 23 of the Domestic Violence Act clearly lays down that ex parte relief, which means in the absence of the other spouse, would be immediately provided. The concept of the protection officer is given in the law so that the victim can have an interaction with the protection officer, and the protection officer can go to the home. Courts can't go to the home. So this is a mechanism that connects the victim with the court, which is called the protection officer. So there are a lot many duties which he has to do, and before the real order started flowing out, the protection officer has to give a report, what we call as a domestic incident report. So
Okay.
there's a whole concept of public intervention, this institutionalized intervention. So the law is well alive to that, and it is only developing and expounding in our country.
Okay. And one of the other questions that had come in was that when something gets, so when the victim gets to a level of saturation and they reach out for help, does the law also consider the history of abuse?
Yes.
And there may be no evidence for that, like मारपीट हो या कमरे में बंद किया हो, घर से बार बार बाहर निकाला हो. Like I know of somebody जिनको रात को 12 बजे घर से बाहर निकाल दिया था और फिर सुबह 4-5 बजे खोल दिया था दरवाज़ा, लेकिन वो रात के पहर और सर्दी के दिन थे, वो बाहर बैठी रहीं. So मारपीट नहीं थी, but
which
It is
is
still
fine.
cruelty.
Therefore, I said at the beginning, the definition of the domestic violence is not confined in the realm of the physical abuse. It is a mental abuse, and this sending somebody outside the house, who is a part of the house, to stay alone in the chilly winter night is the manifestation of a abuse of another level. Definitely, it is covered, and you asked a question, does the court take into the consideration the abuse and the history
And the
of the
history of,
abuse?
yes.
My answer is yes. When we make a petition, we have to chronicle all the things right from the beginning of the relationship until the date we are approaching to the court. And now the another layer of your question was, there are so many things. If somebody has been violated physically, there would be a cut mark, there would be a wound, there can at least be the bruises. But when it is a mental violence, how would that come and how would the court assess that? So I will say this in it can be understood from two different perspectives. So even prior to the passing of this law, and prior to the technology and all the things, what used to be believed was the version of the complainant. Why would a female go and lodge a complaint against the husband that he has beaten? He has done anything. So, prima facie, that version is believed because in our system, which is rightly so, because there were so many injustification that has happened to the female in earlier years prior to the having the constitution. Therefore, there is a need for the protection of their rights. So the way the SC and the ST conditions are ameliorated by giving them benefit in terms of the reservation, similarly females are being put at par with the male by carving out exception, and Article 15 of the Constitution of India deals with that. So even the days when there was no technology, is still the victim in other forum by way of a criminal complaint used to go to the police. She does not have the evidence. Even there are so many hundred things that happens inside the houses which nobody knows and for which there cannot be evidence. For example, if a wife who is a victim comes and say that I have been sexually exploited by my husband, what and her accusation is limited to a certain point, which does not mean that it is ravishing or pulverizing the lady, but it is little just before that. So even then the court would say, why would a lady come against the husband to say something of this nature? So at the first level, this is how it is looked upon. So I can say prima facie, what is the word that is used, your version will be taken as a gospel truth.
Okay.
At a first level, unless and until there are material contradiction, you don't need to worry about evidence. Even if you do not have a single evidence, but you are actually the victim, then you have to give a complaint that will be assessed. At a later stage, you will be cross-examined, and if you are lying, you will be exposed in the cross-examination. The good lawyers know how to break the people who is lying. It's difficult to break the people who are truthful to their version about their abuse, because when you lie, you keep on building the stories. Instead of telling one line like this, it keeps on coming like this sine wave, and the contradictions will hit your case. So and you just cannot go to the court and say anything, because it will be eventually after the trial the court would apply its mind and whether somebody is speaking or not.
I would like to mention here that this is all very umbrella information.
Precisely.
Because the endeavor of this discussion is to provide information. However, people listening need to keep in mind that every case is peculiar and specific to their own context of abuse and violence. It may not even be violent, it may just be abusive. It could also be a personality clashes. There could be
Precisely.
mental illnesses involved. So
Precisely.
just to kind of
Yeah.
draw the boundaries here,
yeah,
that it is
exactly.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
very specific. Eventually, every single case is
Is
peculiar
different.
and
I have never seen
specific.
two
Yeah.
cases similar in any way. Just like
In so
two
many years
individual-
of your practice.
Yes, and just like two people are so different, so is the case with the court. In the court,
Yeah.
every case has its own unique things, and still I am wondering, what are the different shapes of it, the abuses, why there is a need to do this? Because before the start of the discussion, you were talking something about the anatomy of all this abuse. Can you just take me as well as to everyone about what exactly it is?
Well, primarily it originates from certain unfulfilled needs. It could be the need to be in control. It could be a belief that my family needs to do what I want to do to be a good family. And some people also have the very delusional belief that to be a perfect family, we need to be a certain way. But the certain way is specific to what the person thinks, because a certain way can be different, certain can be
For me.
different for you and certain can be different from me. And problem becomes, it's okay to have individual views and perceptions and opinions, and we are all entitled to have our own opinions. Problem becomes when we start to enforce our opinions or our values on the other person and we expect them to comply. And that is why it is coercive compliance by one person upon the other. And when this becomes a repeated pattern, it becomes abusive, because there is invasion of boundaries, emotional, mental, sometimes spiritual as well, because certain families which, certain people who are married into different beliefs, but
Correct.
so initially they say, हाँ, it's okay अगर आप अपना वो करते रहें, लेकिन बाद में there's coercion that you need to follow what we follow, because now you're a part of our family and you can't be following something that your maternal family was following. That is also coercion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about, you're also talking about the willingness, or rather the propensity to get into somebody so that he just gets subjugated and follow your every command and your action. When you're talking about the anatomy, so what is that? By how these different kinds of abuses comes together to form that
Yeah.
abuse?
So I just spoke about the mindset from where it comes, the reason how the mindset comes around, and obviously there's a whole psychological groundwork to that from childhood. But once one is in the abuse, it's like आप मैदान जंग में उतर गए, तब तो आपको जंग जारी रखनी है क्योंकि आपको जीतना है. So the anatomy of abuse is something that we cover when you're on the battlefield. So once in the war zone, the methods followed to keep the abuse in place by the abuser. Like I mentioned, the first one is isolation, where the victim is cut off from friends and family, so there's no outside support, and there is complete. So that ensures dependence, and dependence can be provision or the raw material to control. Then there is induced exhaustion, the inability to not let the other person get full sleep, not get the other person to eat properly, or to overexert by saying that हम maid नहीं रखेंगे, सारा काम तुम करोगे. So the exhaustion, physical, mental and emotional exhaustion, are also ways of making sure that the person is kept under control. Then there are threats that if you don't do this, then I'm going to ask your parents for a certain amount of money. So, the dowry demands, or these days women are earning, so the demand is from the woman, it's the person who's earning themselves, that you need to pay up a certain amount, you need to contribute into the kharcha of the house, otherwise I will do this. So these very covert kind of exchanges, when negotiation is a little bit above the boundary of negotiation, is also threat.
But tell me, since female started earning, and earlier they don't used to earn and they used to depend upon the husband, and husband was made to believe that he is the prime caregiver, not only to the child but also to the wife. But now once wife have also started working and earning, why do they complain that I'm being asked to contribute in the family when husband is also doing? What is so wrong about it? Why there's not such acceptance?
I guess because It depends on the amounts both of them earn, and secondly, it stems from the primal belief that the man is the provider. This goes, this mindset is rooted way back into the tribal mindset, when we were all tribes and community, where the woman was to stay at home and the man would go out to hunt, to gather the skin as clothes, and to provide for the old people at home, the children at home, and the women at home. So it does stem from there. Though I do also know of men and women who have equal partnership in running the house, and they very happily engage and do it. And they have rules around it, like, you earn an X amount, so you contribute this amount. I earn an X amount and I contribute this amount. And once they come to an understanding, it becomes a process. It's pretty.
All right. So
Yeah,
the takeaway that I have from this is, if it is arising out of a mutual understanding and a consensus is developed, yes, I will do this, and then the home can work in a better
Yes,
condition. But if
absolutely.
I impose a condition that since you are earning, you must have to give to it, it would be kind of a economic exploitation. In my words, in your
Yes.
words, it would be kind of a putting the demand,
Yeah.
and which the lady would say, no, I'm not agreeing to it.
Yes.
You are not asking my contribution, rather you are trying to take the money to subjugate
So
me.
yeah, it's also partly if the version changes. Like many a times when before they get married, there is a certain understanding, or the woman agrees that you will look after us and I will look after my parents because there's lack of money there, and it is agreed upon, and later then it is changed or
Now you are
without
part
any.
of this family.
Yes.
So therefore you have to
Yes.
give everything to this family,
Yeah.
not to your parent.
Yeah. So which comes across as betrayal or insensitivity and also coercion.
Hmm.
Some of the abuse is also confusing because it has occasional indulgences, like I could beat my spouse up and then say, okay, tomorrow we are going out for an ice cream and you can shop what you want, or we'll go for dinner and you can shop as much as you want. So the abuse is rewarded by something to keep it in place.
But-
So in those cases, abuse becomes a ritual. How would you help the victim decipher that this is a form of abuse? Because some people don't understand that this is abuse
Precisely.
because they think that no, he loves me so much.
So whenever anyone approached to me relating to any domestic violence case, and after the discussion and all the practice that I have, I see that every legal case has a psychological element of domestic violence more, and but not necessarily every such violence which is abuse at home is covered within the parameters of the law, because neither the victim nor the abuser know the difference between the two. It is happening at a very auto level. Even the abuser doesn't know how the action that he is indulging is causing a pain to the female. So there comes a situation and where the female even doesn't know how it is being said and done. So there I feel, then usually I have two options available at that point of time: to take the recourse of law, or to suggest a person to meet a good counselor, because the decision here of taking them to the court may absolutely put an end to the relationship. So here I got to be very cautious, because anybody who's coming to me doesn't necessarily mean that I have to take them to the court, because they have a life to take care of, and whether they have reached to a situation which is beyond the permissible and the accepted limit of that individual, not about saying that it is the parameter, and once it reaches to this parameter only, then the saturation point will be understood, then only you should go and knock the door of the court. There are people who are very clear, no, one abuse and one thappad is good enough. The movie Thappad is also based on that, which I saw and found very relevant in today's context. So this is where I have to decide and take a call, and of course I do inform them, and then I believe that lot many cases can be resolved if both the husband and the wife understands why it works and they want to resolve it. They can have it resolved through the psychological intervention,
Yes.
and before spilling it into the court, because there the whole thing goes in a very different direction. So
Yes.
these are the little small calls that we as a lawyer should be very responsible of taking.
Yes, I agree with you because the psychological, emotional, and mental aspects look into more of the narratives of life experiences, whereas the law probably looks at the factual inputs or the factual relevance of the things of the life experience,
Precisely.
again, specific to individuals. Um, so, one of the other things, moving on to the next, there is demonstration of complete control, which is the easiest one to spot because there is, you will not do anything without asking me, and you will not do anything that I don't approve of. तुम कपड़े भी मेरे मर्जी से पहनोगी और कलर भी मैं चूज़ करूँगा, and you will only talk to the people that I ask you to speak to or I'm okay with you speaking to, and whatever conversation you have with other people, I should be aware of. So that is a demonstration of complete control, and I think that is one of the most obvious that the victim picks up as abuse, because it can only go on for so long. It will have repercussions on the health, mental health, emotional health, and even physical health of some other people, and it can be very closely integrated to demonstration of complete control is also degradation.
Okay.
That you need to do things according to what I say because you are not good enough to choose and to make the choices or to be independently deciding what needs to be done. In fact, independent, you don't know enough to take independent decisions of anything. And that is again, it could also be insults and threats and demeaning remarks. But I am actually looking at it from both aspects. One which is the obvious, one which is a little camouflaged, and so it's harder to pick up because, like I said, it's the perception of an individual. Like when we began the discussion, we spoke about abuse is when somebody hits you. After that, abuse is when somebody is straight away saying something that is not acceptable. Abuse is something that is completely invading your boundary, and it is so obvious that you're being invaded. But abuse is at many levels. It could be very covert as well as overt.
What I was picking up from what you were saying, what about the cases where, as I said earlier, neither the victim nor the abuser knows what they are doing? And how can your intervention make them to understand the path that they are following can be changed, altered to make their matrimony work? How can you help the people who are not purposefully doing, maybe they have acquired certain learnt behavior and they see, yes, abusing a female is perfectly alright, my uncle, my chacha, my
Yes.
forefathers used to do it, and he just started saying, the female comes from a family who says everybody gives respect to the female in our house, how dare he, and he doesn't know that this is a problem, and she's taking this as too much of a problem. Now two very nice people otherwise in their every other action got merged into this situation. The question to me is, should I send them to the court to seek the redressal, or is there a way for the two nice people to alter their way, to understand their different perception and collide and converge and then make it good for themselves?
Yes.
So how you can play a role in it?
First, by understanding what is the intention of the marriage, and to what extent, what is the price that you are willing to pay to be in the marriage. What are the individual needs? How do you want to raise your children? What is your own relationship with yourself in terms of loving yourself and respecting yourself? It's very often we say, he doesn't respect me or she doesn't respect me, she calls me names. Uh, but do you respect yourself? Um, we teach people how to treat us. So it's very. I would like to say that it's very important to know what is it that you're tolerating, or what is it that you're adapting or paying or adjusting to, maybe, because that is giving out a signal to how you treat yourself.
Okay.
So very often we say that जो पहला थप्पड़ होता है वो दूसरे की गलती होती है, लेकिन उसके बाद हर थप्पड़ आपकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है.
True.
गलती नहीं है, but responsibility है.
Responsibility. You should have raised the voice and you chose not to,
Yes.
therefore you are bearing it.
Even if you can't stop it, even if there are many limitations, but you need to know, you need to become aware, you need to not remain, you don't need to pretend that you're asleep. Wake up, and then you can decide that you want to be in the relationship. That's perfectly okay, but at least become aware. That is my intervention.
All right. Now tell me one thing which I have often seen people saying, because I, being in the field, know about it. There are many female who are at a high level of this success ladder, occupying good position, being a journalist or being the corporate person at the managerial level. They often come to me and say that they were beaten last night, black and blue. They still remain to be in the marriage. And for 10 years, 8 years, 12 years, they just sit over it. From the outside, it looks unbelievable that the lady with such a commanding position, who has 150 people to report to and 80 males, 70 females, and she's saying that she was beaten. So why it does happen? I think you have covered it initially, but why? I mean, in this specific example, how would you put it up? What prevent the female at such position to raise their voice or raise the alarm?
Because the level at what their achievement in their professional life is determined by the IQ and making the right moves, and the relationship they share with their professional part of themselves. But the relationship they share with a spouse or a partner or a husband or wife, for that matter, because this is not gender specific, like we had also specified in our last discussion, comes from the emotional space within us. And the beliefs related to profession can be very different from the beliefs related to the emotional self. Like I said, conditioning around believing that it's your responsibility to make the relationship work is enough to keep you in the marriage, no matter how badly one is treated. So unless that belief is looked into and let's say we figure out where the belief is coming from, a person may figure that it's not their own belief, it is something that has been passed on through generations.
Okay.
They may still want to keep the belief, which is fine, but at least they'll be aware of it.
I think we have covered mostly on the all the aspects of law, but still one thing in a family, which I believe would be a matter of a larger discussion, would be the relationship between husband and wife revolving around the child. Because most of the marriages in India I see, may not be of this time, but earlier that people used to, female used to often say, yeah, husband often used to say that I'll file the divorce only when let me settle my children. Let them complete class 12th or let them reach to the graduation level.
बच्चे बड़े हो जाएं.
एक बार बच्चे बड़े हो जाएं, settle हो जाएं, then I will settle it out. Then after 20 years, the reason to go for the divorce for 25 years doesn't make much of a sense from the society perspective, not from my perspective, because everybody even at the dying time has the option of going for the divorce. Because one of the old gentlemen who came to me to seek the divorce after 38 years of marriage. I said, why? He said, I want to die in peace. So that is the kind of the statement when you hear, so you cannot be judgmental why somebody is doing at what stage.
Yes.
But yeah, so from the child perspective, a little light that you can throw, and definitely we should be coming up with another detailed discussion about the matrimony and the child being the center part of it, and how we need to take care of the child. But from today's perspective, why in the violence child becomes so relevant a factor to affect the eventual decision? I think that would be my last question of the day to you.
Okay. So before I answer that question, we would like to, I think we agree on this, that this is a very broad subject, and maybe we can have an exclusive discussion on this. What role does bringing up children play in keeping a bad marriage in place? Or a happy marriage in place? We could talk happy things as well.
Exactly. We can and we
So
should.
yeah, I think the reason that things revolve around the child is also again to do with beliefs.
Okay.
Babies don't say that I need both parents. Babies don't know what both parents are. Babies don't say that it's my responsibility to keep your marriage intact.
Okay.
But
Oh,
babies don't tell their grandparents that I'm the magic pill which is going to fix everything and make this marriage from a bad marriage to a very happy marriage and a fairy tale. It is again the beliefs of the elders
okay.
and the expectations that sometimes are even thrown into the fishbowl before the, like on hearing conception of the child. बस ये बच्चा आएगा सब ठीक हो जाएगा.
Often we
Yeah.
used to say.
So the बच्चा आएगा भी या नहीं मालूम नहीं है. लेकिन the minute that conception is heard of, there is an expectation put on the child. And so how this becomes the bigger belief, how it's related to all the other beliefs related to it, we will probably cover in our next discussion.
Yeah.
Before we close, thank you for having this talk with me.
What an opportunity. I think everybody must have benefited, because this is one of its own kind of a situation where a psychologist and a lawyer talking across as to how people should look at the abuse and the violence. So there is a problem, there is a solution to mend it through this way, and there are other ways to approach to the court when it goes beyond the thing. So in that way, I
Yes.
believe it went well. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be with
Thank
you.
you.
What a time we
Thanks.
had. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening us.